The best thing to do is learn from other guys' mistakes. I mean, it's like, Patton used to say, I mean, it's an honor to die for your country. Make sure the other guy gets the honor, so our approach is really to try and learn vicariously, but there's a lot of mistakes that I've repeated. I can tell you that. The biggest one, probably the biggest category over time, is being reluctant to pay up a little for a business I knew was really outstanding, or to continue to buy it at higher prices when I knew it was outstanding. So the costs of that have been in many, many billions, and I'll probably keep making that mistake. The mistakes are made when there are businesses you can understand and they're attractive and you don't do something about it. I don't worry at all about the mistakes that come about because when I met Bill Gates, I didn't buy Microsoft or something. That's not my game. But the mistakes are made when most of our mistakes have been mistakes of omission rather than commission. Charlie?
Yeah, I think most people get very few what I call no-brainer opportunities, where it's just so damned obvious that this is going to work. And since they are very few and they may be separated by periods of years, I think people have to learn to have the courage and the intelligence to step up in a major way when those rare opportunities come by.
With people and maybe start where you began the annual meeting this year, and that was talking to your investors and telling them a little bit about investing, some tips and lessons along the way. You kind of used it as a teaching experience at the top.
Yeah, normally I don't do that. I mean, in fact, I can't remember when I did it. We just go right into questions and answers. But I really thought that maybe we were giving a little bit the wrong lesson because all the questions would naturally tend toward current events. And so this time I went back actually to 1942 when I bought my first stock as an illustration of all the things that have happened since 1942. We've had 14 presidents, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats. We've had world wars. We had 9/11. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have all kinds of things. The best single thing you could have done on March 11th, 1942, when I bought my first stock, was just buy an index fund and never look at a headline, never think about stocks anymore, just like you would do if you bought a farm. You just buy the farm and let the tenant farmer run it for you. And I pointed out that if you'd put $10,000 in an index fund that reinvested dividends, and I paused for a moment to let the audience try and guess how much it would amount to, and it would come to $51 million now. And the only thing you had to really believe in then is that America would win the war and that America would progress as it has ever since 1776.
As well as he's made them. It's a lifelong game, and if you don't keep learning, other people will pass you by.
I would say temperament still is the most important, wouldn't you, Charlie?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But temperament alone won't do it.
No, temperament alone won't do it.
You have to have the temperament and the right basic idea, and then you have to keep at it with a lot of curiosity for a long, long time.
But you don't have to be have any blinding insights or have a high IQ to look at a PetroChina, for example, and
No.
when you get a company that is doing 2.5 million barrels a day. That's 3.5% of the world, or 3% of the world's oil production. And they're selling based on U.S. prices, using WTI, as West Texas Intermediate as a base price, and where they have a significant part of the marketing and refining in a country. The tax rate's 30%. They say they're going to pay out 45% to you in dividends. Don't have unusual amounts of leverage. If you're buying something like that at well under half maybe a third of what comparable oil companies are selling for, that's not high-level stuff. I mean, you have to be willing to read the reports. But I enjoy doing that. But you wouldn't say that requires any high-level insights or anything, Charlie?
Well, when you were buying that block of stock, nobody else to speak of was buying.
Thank
So
heavens.
the insights can't have been all that common. No, I think that takes a certain amount of what an old Omaha friend used to call uncommon sense. He used to say there is no common sense. When people say common sense, they mean uncommon sense. Part of it, I think, is being able to tune out folly as distinguished from recognizing wisdom. And if you just got whole categories of things you just bat away so your brain isn't cluttered with them, then you're better able to pick up a few sensible things to do.
Yeah, we don't consider many stupid things. We get rid of them fast. And in fact, people get irritated with us because they'll call us, and when they're in the middle of the first sentence, we'll just tell them forget it. And we can see it coming, and that's the way actually the mind works. There was a great article in the New Yorker magazine 30 years ago or so, a little more than that. It was when the Fischer-Spassky chess matches were going on, and it got into the speculation of would the humans being able to take on computers in chess. And here were these computers doing hundreds of thousands of calculations a second, and they said, how can the human mind, when all you're really looking at is the future, the results from various moves in the future, how can a human mind deal with a computer that's thinking at speeds that are unbelievable? And of course, they examine the subject some, and a mind like, well, in fact, all minds, but some much better than others, but a Fischer or a Spassky essentially was eliminating about 99.99% of the possibilities without even thinking about it. So it wasn't that they could outthink the computer in terms of speed, but they had this ability in what you might call grouping or exclusion, where essentially they just got right down to the few possibilities out of these zillions of possibilities that really had any chance of success. And getting rid of the nonsense, I mean, just figuring that people start calling you and say, I've got this great, wonderful idea. Don't spend 10 minutes, once you know in the first sentence that it isn't a great, wonderful idea. Don't be polite. Go through the whole process. And Charlie and I are pretty good at that. We can hang up very fast. Right?
Is the box that says knowns and important, knowable and important, is there anything in that box? And can you tell what's in that box and what isn't in that box? And it's what I call knowing your circle of competence. And my circle of competence doesn't include the ability to predict interest rates a day from now or a year from now or 5 years from now. So I say, can I function without knowing that? It's the same way as predicting what business is going to do or the stock market is going to do. I can't do any of those things. But that doesn't mean that I can't do well investing.
We've run Berkshire now for 47 years. There have been several times, 4 or 5 times when we've thought it was significantly undervalued. We saw the price get cut in half at least 4 times, or roughly in half, in fairly short periods of time. And I would say this, if you run any business for a long period of time, there are going to be times when it's overvalued and sometimes when it's undervalued. Tom Murphy ran one of the most successful companies the world's ever seen, and in the early 1970s, his stock was selling for about a third of what you could have sold the properties for. And Berkshire, back in 2000, 2001, whenever it was, that I wrote in the annual report that we were also going to repurchase shares, was selling at what I thought was a very low price, and we didn't get any repurchased. But the beauty of stocks is they do sell at silly prices from time to time. I mean, that's how Charlie and I have gotten rich. Ben Graham writes about it in Chapter 8 of The Intelligent Investor. Chapters 8 and chapters 20 are really all you need to do to get rich in this world. And Chapter 8 says that in the market you're going to have a partner named Mr. Market. And the beauty of him as your partner is that he's kind of a psychotic drunk. And he will do very weird things over time. And your job is to remember that he's there to serve you and not to advise you. And if you can keep that mental state, that all those thousands of prices that Mr. Market is offering you every day on every major business in the world practically, that he is making lots of mistakes. And he makes them for all kinds of weird reasons. And all you have to do is occasionally oblige him when he offers to either buy or sell from you at the same price on any given day, any given security. So it's built into the system that stocks get mispriced. And Berkshire has been no exception to that. I think Berkshire, generally speaking, has come closer to selling around its intrinsic value over a 47-year period or so than most large companies. If you look at the range from our high to low in a given year and compare that to the range high and low on 100 other stocks, I think you'll find that our stock fluctuates somewhat less than most, which is a good sign. But I will tell you, in the next 20 years, Berkshire will someday be significantly overvalued and at some point significantly undervalued. And that will be true for Coca-Cola and Wells Fargo and IBM and all of the other securities that I just don't know in which order and at which times. But the important thing is that you make your decisions based on what you think the business is worth.
It's not complicated. I mean, human relations, usually aren't that complicated, and certainly it's in people's self-interest to develop habits that work well in human relations, but an amazing number of people seem to mess it up one way or another.
How much has Berkshire Hathaway been copied either in investing America or corporate America? I'm not saying we deserve to be necessarily, but people don't want to do it differently than they're presently doing it.
You might argue that Mrs. B, having started what you may have seen out there this weekend with $500 in 1937, without a day in school in her life, and building that into a great enterprise, you might say, well, that is something to study. I mean, is it because she couldn't speak English when she got over here? Maybe we cleanse people. I mean, what is there to learn from seeing somebody create an incredible success like that in a competitive business? She didn't invent something that the world had never seen before. She didn't have a lock on some piece of real estate that protected her from competition. All of these, and yet she accomplished something that virtually no one has accomplished. Now, why aren't business schools studying her? Why are they talking about EVA, economic value added, as we talked about earlier? Any of these? I mean, here is a success. Something has made her a success. Is it something? Is it a 200? She's very smart, but is it a 220 IQ? No, it isn't. It's a very smart woman, but it's not something that's incapable of being replicated in the habits and the way of thinking. But who is studying her? I mean, they present her as a curiosity, but if you go to any of the top 20 business schools, there's not one page that's being given to anybody to study what is an incredible success. And I find that very interesting. That and to some extent, I've seen it in the investment world. There's this. For one thing, it's probably a little discouraging to a professor of management at some major business school who's gone on to get his doctorate and everything to think he has to come out and hang around the furniture mart and study a woman in a golf cart. I mean, but they'd be better off if they did.
investment framework that comes straight from, in my view, from the intelligent investor and from Phil Fisher, more from the intelligent investor, actually. And then I think you ought to learn everything you can about industries and businesses where you think you have the ability to get your mind around them if you work at them. And with that arsenal, you'll do very well. And if you've got the temperament for the business. Charlie?
Yeah, well, of course, I've watched Warren all these decades, and he's learned a hell of a lot, even the last 20 or 30 years. So it's a game of continuing to learn, and he can denigrate this little frou-frou that enables him to pick the biggest oil company in China or this or that. But those basic principles alone that he knew a long time ago wouldn't have given him the ability to make the recent investment decisions